let's begin. So you've seen the movies, a chiseled hero, oiled up and defiant, standing in the sun-drenched sand of the Colosseum. He raises his sword to the roaring crowd, a symbol of honor, strength, and righteous rebellion. He is a gladiator. A legend, a rock star in a leather skirt. Yeah, forget all of that. The romanticized image of the gladiator is one of history's most successful and, frankly, most ridiculous marketing campaigns. In reality, being a gladiator in ancient Rome wasn't a heroic career path. It was a death sentence with a few snack breaks. Imagine the worst, most dangerous, soul-crushing job you can think of. Say, cleaning industrial meat grinders with your tongue. Now, imagine that job is also a public performance. Your boss owns your body, and your only retirement plan is getting mauled by a bear in front of 50,000 screaming fans. Congratulations. You've just scratched the surface of what it was really like to be a gladiator. This wasn't a story of glory. This was a story of property, pain, and the desperate struggle to see the next sunrise. So grab your trident, say goodbye to your loved ones, and let's take a stroll through your new, spectacularly awful life. Number 1. The world's worst job application. First things first, how did you land this prestigious position? Let's be clear, you weren't browsing Roman LinkedIn for opportunities in live entertainment and Mortal Kombat. The vast majority of gladiators didn't choose this life. It was violently shoved upon them. You were most likely a prisoner of war, captured from some distant land the Romans decided to add to their collection. One day you're farming peacefully in Gaul, the next you're chained up, force-marched 1,000 miles, and sold to a guy who looks at you like you're a piece of high-priced cattle. Which, by the way, you are. Or perhaps you were a slave who was just a little too mouthy. Your master, tired of your attitude, could sell you to a gladiator school or Ludus as a punishment. It was a convenient way to get rid of a problem and make a little cash on the side. Think of it as being sent to the world's most lethal boarding school, where the final exam involves a man with a net trying to stab you in the face. Then there were the criminals, condemned to death ad Ludus, to the games. For them, the arena was just a more creative form of execution. Instead of a quick, boring beheading, they got the honor of providing a bit of light entertainment before being disemboweled by a professional. But what about the volunteers? The free men who signed up willingly? Yes, they existed, but they were the desperate, the destitute, or the deranged. These were men buried under mountains of debt, disgraced soldiers, or adrenaline junkies with a death wish. By signing a contract or auctoramentum, they voluntarily became slaves for an agreed-upon term, trading their freedom and legal rights for a signing bonus and the chance to maybe win enough prize money to pay. By signing a contract or auctoramentum, they voluntarily became slaves for an agreed-upon term, trading their freedom and legal rights for a signing bonus and the chance to maybe win enough prize money to pay off their gambling debts. It was the ancient world's equivalent of joining a multi-level marketing scheme that also required you to fight a lion. Welcome to Sweat and Blood, Inc. So you've been acquired. Welcome to the Ludus, your new home, prison, and corporate training center, all rolled into one. The man in charge is the lanista. He's your owner, your trainer, your warden, and your agent. He's a businessman whose product is human suffering, and you are his prime asset. He buys you cheap, feeds you just enough to build muscle, and hopes to lease you out for a massive profit before you inevitably expire. Your entire existence is now micromanaged for maximum marketability. Your new diet is functional. You'll be chowing down on a carb-heavy mush of barley and beans. They called gladiators hordearii, or barley men, which sounds less like a fearsome warrior and more like a sad, gluten-free bread. This diet wasn't for your health. It was to pack on a layer of subcutaneous fat. Why? Because a little extra flab could stop a blade from hitting a vital organ, leading to more dramatic, bloody, but non-fatal wounds. The crowd loved blood, but a fighter who died too quickly was a bad investment. You were literally being fattened up for the slaughter. Your days are a monotonous cycle of brutal, repetitive training. You'll spend hours hacking away at a wooden post with a heavy wooden sword, swinging weapons that were twice the weight of the real thing to build stamina. Every muscle will scream, every joint will ache, and your trainers, often ex-gladiators themselves, will beat the technique into you with a rod. This wasn't a supportive, team-building environment. It was a high-stress factory for producing killers, where failure meant a savage beating, and success just meant you were one day closer to the real thing. You lived in cramped, shared cells under constant guard, locked away like a rabid dog. Forget privacy, forget comfort, forget having any control over your own life. You were a tool being sharpened for a single bloody purpose. Number 4. Dress to kill or be killed. On the day of the games, you don't just grab a sword and shield from a general-purpose armory. Oh no, that would be far too logical. Gladiator combat was a highly specialized, cruelly curated form of entertainment. Your equipment wasn't chosen for its effectiveness, it was chosen for the spectacle. The Romans loved a good mismatch. Think of it as ancient rock, paper, scissors, but with more screaming. You'll be assigned a specific class, like a Threx, a Myrmio, or a Retiarius, each with its own bizarre and often wildly impractical set of gear. Are you a Retiarius? Congratulations, your primary weapon is a net. You get a trident and a small dagger, but for armor, you get a shoulder guard. That's it. Your job is to run around half-naked trying to ensnare a heavily armed opponent who is actively trying to chop you into pieces. It's the Roman equivalent of showing up to a tank battle with a fishing pole and a positive attitude. Or maybe you're a secutor, whose sole purpose is to hunt the Retiarius. You get a huge, smooth helmet with tiny eye holes to stop the trident from poking your eyes out. The good news is it offers great protection. The bad news is you can barely see, you can barely breathe, and you'll probably pass out from heat exhaustion before the fight is even over. And the helmets, my God, the helmets. They were masterpieces of psychological terror and poor ventilation. Often ornately decorated but brutally functional, they were designed to be intimidating while completely hiding your face. This was a clever trick. It dehumanized you, turning you from a person into a faceless monster for the crowd to cheer against. You weren't a man fighting for his life, you were a character in a play. The bronze prisons baked your head under the Italian sun, muffled sound into a disorienting roar, and gave you the peripheral vision of a startled horse. Your armor was less about keeping you alive and more about making sure you died in a visually interesting way. Your armor was less about keeping you alive and more about making sure you died in a visually interesting way. The night before the games, you're treated to a special dinner, the Cena Libera. This wasn't some generous act of kindness from your owner. It was a public relations event. The public, morbidly curious fans, could come and watch you eat, gawking at you like an animal in a zoo before the main event. You could eat and drink your fill, a lavish feast compared to your usual barley slop. Some gladiators would carp the diem, gorging themselves one last time. Others, paralyzed with fear, couldn't stomach a bite. Many would use the opportunity to give messages to loved ones, settling their affairs with the grim understanding that this was, for all intents and purposes, their last meal. Imagine trying to enjoy a steak dinner while a crowd of strangers places bets on how you're going to die tomorrow. The morning of the games begins with the Pompa, a grand parade into the arena. You and the other gladiators are dressed in embroidered cloaks, marching alongside musicians and officials, a procession of condemned men dressed for a festival. You circle the arena, showing yourselves off to the 50,000 spectators who are roaring with anticipation. The emperor is in his box, the senators are in their seats, and the plebs are packed into the cheap seats, all of them hungry for blood. This is the moment the sheer scale of the horror sets in. This entire city, this entire civilization has gathered to watch you bleed. Then comes the waiting. You're herded into the dark, cramped tunnels beneath the arena floor. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, fear, incense, and the coppery tang of old blood that never quite washes out. You can hear the roar of the crowd above, a deafening, inhuman sound. You hear the clanging of gates, the snarling of wild animals in their cages, and the screams of the poor souls who went on before you. This is the liminal space between life and death, the green room for the damned. All that training, all that suffering has led to this moment, waiting in the dark for your name to be called. It's not about glory or honor anymore. It's about trying not to vomit inside your fancy, vision-impairing helmet. 6. It's showtime, folks. You step onto the hot sand of the arena floor, which has been helpfully raked clean of the blood and viscera from the morning's warm-up acts, usually a light fare of animal hunts and public executions. Charming. You and your opponent salute the editor, the sponsor of the games, with the traditional phrase, Ave Imperator morituri te salutant. Hail Emperor, we who are about to die salute you. It's a bit on the nose, but hey, the crowd eats it up. Then the music swells, the horn blows, and the business of trying not to die begins. This is not a duel of honor. This is a bloody, chaotic, and exhausting spectacle. There's a referee, the Summa Rudis, who circles the fight, enforcing the rules. And yes, there were rules, sort of. No eye gouging unless you're in a specific type of match where eye gouging is the main event. No throwing your weapon into the crowd. That's just tacky. The referee's job wasn't really about fairness. It was about ensuring the match was entertaining. If the fight got boring, with both of you just circling each other and panting, he'd prod you with his staff to get things moving. He was less of a referee and more of a producer, demanding more action for the paying audience. The crowd is a single, monstrous entity screaming for blood. Every move you make is met with a roar of approval or a chorus of boos. They aren't cheering for you, the person. They're cheering for the helmet you're wearing, the role you're playing. You might be the crowd favorite, or you might be the designated villain of the piece. It doesn't matter. Your job is to put on a good show. A quick, efficient kill is boring. What they want is a dramatic struggle, near misses, flashy parries, and above all, visible suffering. A clean wound is fine, but a gushing theatrical one is better. You're not just a fighter, you're a stuntman, a stage actor, and a human sacrifice. And you'd better hit your marks if you want to have even a sliver of a chance of walking out of here. 7. Thumbs up, thumbs down, you're dead anyway. So you've been knocked down. Your opponent stands over you, sword at your throat, and looks to the crowd for the verdict. This is the moment everyone knows from the movies. The iconic thumbs down for death. Except, it probably didn't happen that way. Most historians believe the signal for death was likely a thumb jab towards the throat, mimicking the kill stroke, while mercy, or missio, was signaled by a closed fist with the thumb tucked inside, a gesture called pollice compresso. But let's not get bogged down in details. The point is, your life is now in the hands of 50,000 screaming strangers who just want to be entertained. Their decision wasn't based on some noble concept of martial valor. It was pure cost-benefit analysis and mob mentality. Did you fight bravely? Did you put on a good show? The crowd would roar its opinion, but the final call belonged to the editor of the games, and he had a budget to consider. You, as a trained gladiator, were an expensive investment for your lanista. Killing you was like crashing a leased Ferrari. It was a waste of a valuable asset. So if you fought well and weren't too horrifically maimed, you had a decent chance of being granted missio. The editor would grant you your life, and you'd be dragged back to the Ludus to be patched up by the doctors so you could do it all over again next month. But mercy was never guaranteed. If you fought poorly, showed cowardice, or if the emperor was just having a bad day and felt like seeing someone get impaled, you were toast. A thumbs down was a death sentence. executed immediately and without appeal. You were expected to take it without flinching, to offer your neck to your opponent and die well. Because even in death, you were still an entertainer. Your last act on this earth was to provide a satisfying, dramatic conclusion to the show. Your life was a rental, and the lease was up. You survived. The crowd granted you mercy, and you've been hauled off the sand, bleeding from several new and interesting places. Don't worry, the company doctor is about to practice his experimental surgery on you. But in the meantime, let's talk about the perks of the job. Spoilers, they're weird. 8. The groupies and the grunge. Congratulations, you're a celebrity. You're also, legally speaking, a thing. This is the central bizarre paradox of your existence. In the eyes of Roman law, you are infamous, a person of low social standing on par with actors, prostitutes, and undertakers. You have no rights. You are property. You can be bought, sold, and disposed of. Respectable citizens would look down on you as a filthy, dishonorable brute. Yet at the same time, you are incredibly famous. You are the Roman equivalent of a deathmatch reality TV star. Children play with gladiator action figures modeled after you. Your victories are immortalized in mosaics and graffiti on city walls. Your sweat, scraped from your body after a match, is sold in tiny vials as a luxury cosmetic, a high-end aphrodisiac for wealthy women. Yes, your bodily fluids are a beauty product. Try not to think about that too hard. This bizarre fame made you an object of intense desire, particularly among the Roman elite. While their husbands were busy writing poems about honor, wealthy matrons would slum it, paying exorbitant amounts of money to spend a night with a champion gladiator. You were seen as the ultimate symbol of raw, untamed masculinity, a dangerous thrill for women bored with their flabby, respectable husbands. You were a walking, talking taboo, and that made you irresistible. But this wasn't a glamorous rock star lifestyle. These encounters were arranged by your lanista, who would pocket the majority of the fee. You were being pimped out by your boss. So while you were revered in the bedroom and on the sand, you were still a slave, a despised yet desired piece of meat, famous for the very thing that was destroying you. It's like being the world's most popular crash test dummy. You were a walking, talking taboo, and that made you irresistible. But this wasn't a glamorous rock star lifestyle. These encounters were arranged by your lanista, who would pocket the majority of the fee. You were being pimped out by your boss. So while you were revered in the bedroom and on the sand, you were still a slave, a despised yet desired piece of meat, famous for the very thing that was destroying you. It's like being the world's most popular crash test dummy. 9. Your retirement plan is a wooden sword. So what's the end game? Is there a way out of this blood-soaked career? Yes, but the odds are roughly the same as a snowball surviving in a volcano. If you manage to fight and, more importantly, survive for years, proving yourself to be a consistent crowd pleaser and a durable investment, you might be awarded the Ludus. This is a small wooden sword, a symbolic representation of the training sword you used in the Ludus. It is your ticket to freedom. Receiving the Ludus in the middle of the arena in front of a roaring crowd was the ultimate achievement for a gladiator. It meant your contract was fulfilled. You were no longer a slave. You were a free man. But let's be realistic. Most gladiators never saw this day. The life expectancy was abysmal. While not every fight was to the death, the cumulative damage of wounds, infections, and brutal training took its toll. Most gladiators were dead before they hit 30. For every one who won his freedom, dozens died on the sand or succumbed to their injuries back in the barracks. Even if you were one of the lucky few to receive the Ludus, what came next? You were a free man, but you were also a social outcast, your body a roadmap of scars, probably suffering from the ancient equivalent of CTE. Your only marketable skill was killing people in an entertaining fashion. Many freed gladiators ended up becoming trainers in a Ludus, spending their golden years beating the next generation of condemned men. Others became bodyguards for the wealthy. The fantasy of retiring to a quiet farm was just that, a fantasy. You could leave the arena, but the arena never really left you. You were free, but you were also broken, forever defined by the violence that had been your entire world. And there you have it, your life as a glorified, celebrity piece of livestock destined for the slaughterhouse. So the next time someone says they were born in the wrong era, remind them that it could have been so much worse. Subscribe for more shattered illusions.